Oh, good morning. Welcome back to the Relove Guitars workshop. And it's been a while since I've done a video, but I've got a few to upload. I'm in the shed today. I've got loads of things on. I'll show you a couple. I've got this Wengi and Oak travel guitar, Oakcaster travel guitar in production. And my God, is this hard stuff to is it hard to work with? It's sanding it, a real beast. But it's going to look fantastic when it's done, and it's going to have a Seymour Duncan pearly gates at the bridge and a Seymour Duncan quarter-pounder slanted at the neck, which is going to be awesome. I've also got an oak and maple, spalted maple, and this one's lining up to have the neck pocket done. So today I'm going to do two neck pockets, both those travel guitars. There's a third one underway, which is going to be a left-hander, but I didn't realise it, but I got a warped piece of oak, well not warped, but slightly curved piece of oak, so I'm having to kind of counter bend that and clamp it, and in the hope that it'll stay together. You never know. So I've got those three on the go. Got some little covers for various things in the making. This stuff is like Oreo cookies. It's amazing material. This Wengi, it shatters. It goes into powder. It's got all kinds of. It goes into shards and splinters. But it shines up beautifully when it's done. And then also hanging up here, I suppose I've got this is number 12. This is a single English oak guitar, which is going to have two rail hammer pickups here, and I'm just waiting for the necks to arrive, and they're a bit staggered. Got one coming in the next couple of weeks, and then a couple more coming later. But the great thing about these, so it's got three of these on the go, and then the one after that is going to be a headless one, and I've got a piece of kit coming from China, thanks to an idea suggested by Victor Angelo. And anyway, that's a different set of things. So what I've got here is the Korina V, and the Korina V is annoying me a bit because I sent away to a company that does laser cutting to ask them for some quotes on alternative versions of this. So I was looking at a brass one and a copper one. No, brass one and an aluminium one, I should say. This is reusable. The only downside is to get this off I had to crack or split this little piece of the thingamajig here, the scratch plate here. There was the screw basically had rusted, and the star at the top had gone, so there was no way I was going to get it out without breaking this off and then having enough room then to cut a slot into the screw to remove it, which I was able to do. So this is reusable. It's not perfect, and there's that minor blemish down there, but I was hoping to get maybe some quotes on another thing, and they're just taking forever. They just don't seem to want the business, and I found this with a couple of different companies. Anyway, that aside, I won't mention any names. So what I've got here is I've got trying out some different fret wire. This is from this is Jescar fret wire that's coming from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, which is a really nice little eBay seller that I've used a few times. And what I use them for, if I can find it, excuse me, I've now gone and lost them. I use them for various things like radius blocks and sort of basic luthier stuff, and they've supplied a couple of these templates. I've used my own up to now, but they've not been accurate. These are laser cut. You can see they've got the burn marks and crosshairs and whatever. But the thing I don't quite understand is to make these work. I really don't get how you're supposed to affix these to your workpiece, because there's no room for clamping, because you've got to get a router around this. Even if you used a Dremel router, it's pretty tight going, which I don't anyway. I've got a 1/2 inch router with 1/4 inch conversion sometimes. Anyway, so that's going to be a challenge. I had thought that maybe I can actually build up some surrounds using MDF, or I could place this on top of a piece of other material. Could be MDF, but it could be something thinner. It could be, I don't know how much thinner. It could be a piece of, I don't know, pickguard plastic or something like that I can screw down in the set places on the bodies, which I've already made, already fixed those with screw positions, including 2 on the bridge and 1 in the neck pocket. Or I could just continue or could try to use the double-sided sticky tape version and see if that actually will hold it long enough to let the router, because you don't really need a lot of force on the router, but a quarter sorry, half-inch Makita router is a big beast, and if you come to the edge and this thing's only just held by some sticky tape, it's going to move and you get these awful screw-up results. So I'm not really sure how to use these, but I do like the accuracy of that, and I figured that for €4 or €5 each one of these, I could, if nothing else, I could use these as the sort of markers to make my own templates, because previously I'd used pickup rings, which aren't, they're always a bit sort of wobbly. Anyway, that's just some of the wonderful things going on. I've got a whole swathe of guitars about to arrive for different customers, so I'm kind of using the quiet period, which you sometimes get, to get on and do these things, which are more fun projects, or personal fun projects. So this guitar is going to be my first one doing a completely different technique to how I've done things before in terms of fretting, and here's an example of what I'm going to do. Now, one of the things that I've done, or the way I've done it previously, is you could easily see and go and look on any of my other videos, but where I've done a refret. But normally I would cut these all roughly to length, lay them in there, then I'd cut them all pretty precisely, but they'd all have an overhang. Then I'd press them and glue them into place. In a guitar like this, I would do an overhang on the fret so that I could preserve the fill, because it's not only is it filled, but it's also lacquered and it's nice and clean, and there's no reason I should disturb that. But normally, having gone to all those lengths to preserve that overhang, then I'm forced to use this hideous tool here, which again comes from Guitars and Woods in Portugal, and it's not their fault. It's a pretty standard tool actually. But this thing here is designed to trim your frets once you've done a refret, and you kind of can see that you place it on the fingerboard or on the top of the new frets, and then you kind of push down the side. Obviously there's a bit of a downward force component, and there's a bit of a sideways force because you've got to edge these sticking out frets. Now, even if you're lucky and that combined diagonal force going this way, sort of diagonally across the neck, if you're lucky and that doesn't lift up and skate this really bad vicious file across the top of your newly installed brand new frets, which it, I have to say, does with alarming regularity. Because of the nature of that component force, it's pushing downwards and sideways, and if you go too much sideways and not enough downwards, it runs across the top. So even if you avoid that happening, when you finally get to the place where you level this off, you end up taking a bit of the surface off this finish, which is a bit counterproductive, since that's what the whole process of cutting these little overhangs is designed to avoid. So even in the best of times, let's say everything goes well, you've not scuffed the top of your frets, you've successfully scraped down the side here with this rather crude device. Notice, by the way, that this is a flat surface, whereas this always has a radius curve, more or less, depending if you're a fender guy. You might be trying to rub a flat piece of hardwood down a 7.25 curve, which is quite pronounced. So this thing's tipping all the time. So it's straight edge is kind of going like this, and if it goes too much like this, you're across the top again. So there's all kinds of accidents waiting to happen. So let's just say you've managed to successfully install your frets, scrape down the side, take a bit of this lacquer off, but you haven't destroyed the endings which you've been striving to finish, and then you polish that back up with some micro mesh, and it's okay, it's not a bad finish. The thing that happens with this is that this is such a precise flush finish using this tool, that the minute your wood dries out in a different climate or a different environment, it stays inside. And I found this on some of the guitars I've had hanging up for about 2 or 3 months in the house now. A tiny fractional change in the moisture content of the fingerboard, and these razor sharp, even if you tidy them up, these edges which you can't get to, the underside edge ends up hanging out by a tiny fraction. And what that means is you start to feel it, and of course I'm okay because I can get my little file on it and tidy it up. But for somebody else who's bought a guitar from me, or bought a guitar from anyone, that's what often you'll hear people complaining about, is that suddenly something's got sharp fret edges. Now, it appears to me that obviously in a manufacturing process there's going to be there's always going to be some sort of tool that comes down the side here and does that job. Which is why a lot of the, I haven't got one here right now, but for example, the thing I noticed it on was one of my oak casters. that neck on there, although being perfectly level, 3 months hanging up inside, what I noticed is that the tiny shrinking of the rosewood meant that this sharp edge, which had previously been microscopically flush by virtue of this mechanism, had just emerged by, it probably even is could even be as little as 1/100 of a millimetre, but it's enough for the finger edge to catch because it's really sharp, because it's ground sharp by this precise action here. So, I don't want that. So anyway, I watched a video a while back, or briefly saw a clip of a video in which some guy was talking about how he was getting the certain kind of fret ends that he wanted, blah blah blah, and I think he was aiming for certain kind of rounded fret ends. Now I have to admit I haven't watched the rest of the video, so I haven't followed his advice on how to get perfectly hemispherical, he called them, fret ends. Now I don't think those are absolutely necessary. What's necessary is that you round off and sand or polish just wherever the tool you've used is likely to leave a sharp edge, which includes the underside bit if you can reach it, or certainly this top arch that you see there. All it needs to do is have that edge, the two planes, the join of the two planes, that has to be smoothed off. Now, given that every single refret I do a full fret leveling, by almost invariably, which gives me ample opportunity to run down the side with all kinds of, from 600 right down to 12,000 paper to soften off these edges, and I also work with the little files to do it manually as well in advance. So I don't need to do all that sort of round edging ending thing. I quite like there being a clear visible bevel of some sort, and I like the process of doing it by hand. But what I did get from that video is a completely different way of doing it, and what it means is that this thing is out of the game. So if that's out of the game, what does it benefit me? Well, it benefits me the fact that I'm never again going to scrape the damn thing across the top of half a dozen of my beautiful frets. Sometimes you run the risk, positive risk, nice risk, of actually getting these laid by chance perfectly evenly. It's not really to do with skill. I mean, it has to do with some experience, but you may just get lucky and the slots may all be perfectly clear and everything may sit just beautifully, and you get a playable set level of frets. I've got that about once in 25 refrets. It's a lot of skill, but it's more luck than anything. But why go and ruin that? And I remember I did. Exactly one of those was so even, and then in the edging process I scraped the hell out of the top of it, forcing me to do a fret level anyway, which was just demoralizing. So the benefit of not using this tool here is that I never again run the risk of scraping the hell out of the tops of the newly laid frets, costing me fret material and time. The second benefit is I don't actually get down to scraping the Jesus out of the edge of this thing here, which means I'm not ever having to kind of do massive repairs on the edge of this thing. The third one is probably the most important one long term for somebody who buys one of my guitars, or any guitar, is that I can choose now to inset the end of the fret about, well, visibly maybe half a millimetre in from the end. It makes no difference to the way it plays. Unless the strings are marginally close to the edge, which is another, you've got another spacing problem. You can cure that with a nut or build a custom nut if that's a real problem. But by insetting the beveled edges, or the final, the full extent of the fret, by setting it just inwards from the edge, which you can't of course do with this because this stops the fret right at the edge, but by physically cutting your chosen fret size just inwards from the edge, then I now have a fret that even if the fingerboard does shrink marginally, there's a little bit of room that this fret will still not end up sticking out over the edge. And I've just, before I put the camera on, I just had a go at doing this one here. Now this isn't the right fret material, I was just using a bit of spare because I've got some jumbo fret material from G&W in Portugal. It's Jescar, I believe, fret wire, and I wanted to test this compared to StewMac, which I normally use, because it's kind of easier to buy it in small amounts, and I've never actually been disciplined enough to work out how many guitars I get out of the StewMac pound of fret wire, but I need to do that at some point. Anyway, so I took a piece of spare 7.25 inch radius. The radius isn't kind of the important thing here, and I just did a little test. So I'll show you what I did. I'll reproduce it. So it's a slower process in one sense, but why the heck not? So I take this thing and I cut it, and look, it's about the right length. And then what I'm going to obviously need to do is I'm going to make a start on one end. So I get this little tang overhang cutter, and I'm going to just trim the end, and I know from instinct to leave about 2.5–3 millimeters, so it gives me a square end on this thing and an overhang. Now that overhang is kind of important because it gives me room to put the fret end wherever I like, but it means that there's a little bit of space to accommodate whatever's caught in the corner of these things, because if you're looking up closely you'd see that obviously with the fills at the end of here, the hole doesn't run all the way straight through and out because it's plugged. So this little overhang distance gives me room to drop the tang in. The overhang isn't so big that the fret end lifts up, or there's always a risk it does, but I'm going to glue it so it doesn't. But the shorter the overhang, the better. But what I've got is I'm going to try and give you this. Sorry about this light. It's just hopefully it'll give you a chance to see it. What I'm trying to arrive at here is the best possible fit. So I'm going to kind of start looking from the end I'm looking at. Now before I do anything, I can see I've got enough to work with. I'm going to take this end over to my Dremel. I haven't got much light over here compared to everything else, but just bear with the noise coming up. And I'm going to hold this thing down, and I'm going to just manually give it approximately a 45-degree bevel to get going with. Now I'm not an expert on the art of the Dremel by any means, and I can't even tell you what this polishing stone is that I'm using, only that it seems to work, and it's given me I've got a load of them in my box of stuff. So there you go, I've got roughly a 45-degree bevel. Nobody really cares what that angle is as long as it's sort of not straight up. So then I can place it and I can drop it in from the edge right there on that end, and while I'm at it now I can come around here and I can look and I can say what's the actual dead end of the fret, or the end stop of the fret on the other side, and I mark it, pick it off, take my fret cutters here, mark that up as accurately as possible, and I'm just snipping it with a little bit of excess on there. Now at the same time I'm going to cut an overhang on this with my tang nibblers or whatever, nippers or whatever they're called. Great little tool. Now I've got a fret that's prepared at this end and now still under building at that end. I'm going to drop it in. I'm going to have a look at it right now, and it's still a little bit too long, so because I can feel that it's still going to run over the edge, and I cut it a bit conservatively. But now I can take that little bit of excess off with my fret pliers, and they're not too accurate. You have to be a little bit careful with those because they're hard to line up. They're a big blunt instrument or crude instrument, but it's near enough. So again I go back over to my Dremel thing, and again just by eye I'm going to give myself roughly a 45-degree angle on here. Now this is where if I needed to lose a tenth of a millimetre in length, I could do that by just coming down onto this and giving it a bit of a welly there, and then go back and redo my angle. Probably need a bit more speed than this, but didn't want to make too much noise. Again, it's handheld, so it's not, it's not kind of scientifically flat, or it's not an exact angle. Sometimes you get a little bit of a waver in it, and you have kind of a bit of a. But by the time I've put my file across that surface, okay, so there I have it. There's my fret ready, custom built. Now, the beauty of that is that it's a pleasant thing. The beauty of not having to use this brute force tool ever again is actually worth the time off camera with a radio on and some music or whatever to just go through and hand build each one of these frets, so that all I need to then do is press them all in. I obviously have to build a bit of a jig to do this one because it's a set neck and it's quite difficult. You can't push all of this neck through the press, but and I'll come back to that when I'm doing it. But right now I can see that this method is quite consistent. As far as the eye can tell, these things are precisely finished, but I haven't even measured them. I've just gauged them by eye and done a little bit of tailoring. to be honest, if I find myself undercutting one, I just throw that one away and do another one. But to have a whole set of these ready to go with no need at all for mashing that edge. And one of the things that I've done in the past, which is just horrible, but you do it because you can't help it sometimes when you're new to it, is sometimes when you run that block up the end, you even end up hitting here and taking a chunk out of this wood, which I've got on my own JV Squire strap. But there you go, you live and learn. Okay, so these are great for demonstration purposes, but I'm going to take those away because they're not going to feature. And I'm going to use the Jescar jumbo frettage, which is groovy stuff. I mean, look at the size of that, lovely. And I don't mind overcutting this slightly for the sake of, you know, getting the thing going. I want a bit of room to work with, so I'm happily, it's no more material than I would traditionally lose or waste in the normal fashion of doing it. So I'm just going to now go through all of this and cut myself all of these frets with a little bit of extra room, and then go onwards and undercut and trim and do all of this stuff by hand. But look at the quality of those beasties. I mean, I actually do love the look of these frets. I think I like their contour or their shape, outline, whatever, a little bit more than I like the StewMac one, comparable StewMac fret wire, but who knows, we shall see. This seems a little less tall than the StewMac one that I've ordered, but it seems a little wider, so it has a kind of visual, it's definitely a jumbo, and it has a definite visual kind of width to it that's really satisfying. It also helps in the sticking down of the fret, especially if you do what I do, which is to use a very small amount of super glue to make sure that the fret stays in its slot, but also to make sure those ends, those slightly overhung ends, stay down, because that can be where you if you're not careful, if you cut them too long or you don't glue them, you can find yourself with a lifting end. And that's pretty depressing, because having gone through all of that hard work and find that your fret level can't really be done very well because you've got these bouncing fret ends. I'm being a bit over generous with this cutting here. I don't need to be so generous. Maybe save a bit of material. So the idea is that this one set of fret material from G&W in Portugal cost, I think it was something like just about €9 plus tax, of 23%. I don't quite know why it's 23%, but anyway, €9. And basically you'll see we're going to get a whole neck out of €9 of fret wire, which is pretty good. I'm not sure that the StewMac is much more, although there are times, and I'm not sure how predictable it is, but there are definitely times when the customs, UK customs, grabs hold of it and forces me to pay some additional tax load duty. So the StewMac stuff can start off looking, not inexpensive, but looking a good buy, but you can end up paying quite a lot by the time it actually comes to your doorstep. I've bought it in the past. I've just do you know what, I've just done something. You could kick me right now. You know what I've done, don't you? Gonna have to radius each one of these by hand. What a wally. Oh, and I've got straight on, and that's because I was dealing with the one before that was a radius. Ha! Spoonbill. Alright, well that's going to just take me a little bit of extra time. It's not impossible to do, but it's just annoying. Let's put these off here, and I'll just take care of the last two pieces the simple way. So there you go, that's me with my brain off for you. But as you know about Real Love Guitars, all mistakes included with your footage. But you know, non-fatal mistakes, we should say. So I just seem to remember this was radius 12 inches, yeah. So in fact what I'll do is I'll just use my spare bit of wire to radius. Sorry, you can keep looking at that. I'm just going to go over to my Bendinator machine and just radius these pieces. This at 12 inches. It might be set at 12, it might be set at 9.5. It's set at 12. Good. Well, I'll just bend these last two. Small, tiny oversight. Not even sure I'd get these little pieces through. I've never done that, but I could try it for fun, just for fun. There you go. Just that simple. Let's see if it will take a single piece through the machine. Maybe, you never know. Push, push. Yeah, it does. And it takes it back as well. Wow. So it's not the best way in the world to do it, but does it come out to 12? It's a little bit tighter than 12 when you do a single piece. That's interesting. Is that good or bad? Well, it's not too bad. But I don't. Yeah, it's a little bit tighter. I can bend it back. Oh, it's difficult. Quite difficult to do that. It starts to become uneven. Let's get the spare bit. Let's just make a tiny adjustment to this. That should. This is now slightly different from 12, so I don't have much choice in this matter. Okay, I've got a few spare bits to always play with. Alright, so that's under the 12, but it might suit these little individual pieces a little bit better. A little bit over radius is always a good thing anyway, because it helps the ends grip into the fingerboard. The other thing about doing these individually is it doesn't quite follow the radius right to the end of the. That's good enough. It doesn't. It's just a little tiny bit flatter right at the end here. So ideally, you wouldn't want to do this, but this is a bit of a sort of a last resort measure. Yeah, let's go of the very end too soon, so it doesn't quite bend the last bit. But we're going to lose a bit of the very end anyway. So yeah, dopey. Dopey and fiddly. And we'll try that again. It's a great tool, the Bendinator. Expensive, you can make your own, and lots of people do. But I was very happy to just buy one because many times I'd rather just be doing jobs like fretting. I much prefer to do the fretting than to be spending my time bending, constructing tools most of the time anyway. There are certain exceptions like the banana tool that I made, but that was an expediency, and you know, I could spend half a day trying to make a fret bender when in fact there's a perfectly good one made in quality stainless steel with bearings and brass fittings and whatnot, and I just thought, well, how many of these things am I going to refret, and how much do I enjoy the process of refretting? Lots, so why not get the best for the purpose? So that's why I spent good money on it. So you can see a bit of a long-winded thing. What I'm going to do, is I'm going to carry on to the end with this radius stuff, and if I can, I'm going to replace some of these with the full length radius with whatever I got left over, just because of that issue of these. I don't want these lifting at the edges as much as I can help it. I prefer the radius to travel all the way through, which is close there. It really isn't that big a deal, but I might just see if I can get away with a couple of refits. Anyway, so nearly there, all good fun, real time. I can't believe that we're nearly in spring again. I'm really pleased about that. Looking forward to another summer of hopefully guitar making. Don in the States asked me the other day about, you know, was guitars my principal main business, and I mean, some of you may or may not know that one of the things I do is, or have done, is before I was doing a lot of this, I was working in corporate world. Actually, I don't want to push these in because I don't want to press down the the ends. Yeah, I was working in corporate stuff, so particular specialist type of service, blah blah blah. Anyway, and ideally for me, this guitar stuff is best supported with some corporate work, which is what I was able to do last year. So far this year I haven't got anything of that nature lined up. But I think I've been lucky enough in that in the first, well, certainly last year, I was comfortably able to do this and the corporate work, because the two things were a nice mix. I think this can provide a better living, or more turnover than I've had so far if I focus a bit more on marketing it, which I do in some particular ways, as some of you all know, but I don't go out and push hard for advertising. I prefer to do it by reputation and word of mouth, which has worked very well up till now for a certain kind of throughput of business, which is always the way with word of mouth. You get a certain flow, but if you need more turnover, then you have to kind of push a little bit harder on the promotional front. I won't say marketing, because I do already do. You know, Facebook is marketing, YouTube is marketing, and so on. So it's not true to say that I don't do marketing. But yeah, you can change your volume of turnover by, I suppose it would be advertising, some direct advertising. Okay, well, what I've done is I've replaced two right down at the other end with fully radiused ones. So here's my full set, and now I'm going to pretty much, that's a spare, different gauge. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go off camera, because you've seen what I do, and I'm going to basically just prepare each one of these things individually with great love and affection and patience, and just enjoy it really, because it's a very, it's you know, your fingerboard or your frets are the heart and soul of your guitar, and it's everything about the playing experience. So I'm going to make sure that what I do here is as good as it possibly can be, because I enjoy this thing, and I want to get this as right as it can be. So just as you saw before, placing it and marking it and having the courage to cut to that line instead of back from it, which means I have to cut again. So cut to the line, young sir. Yeah. And then end up, after the fretting job, I end up with bits of metal all over the shed floor, which is great because Henry gobbles it all up. Henry the Hoover, as we say in the UK. Of course, other brand names of vacuum cleaners are also available. Okay, a bit of undercut required here. And so what I'll do is I'll just cut these all to size in one sort of fell swoop, rather than sort of stopping and starting, and then I'll go back down and tailor each one using the Dremel thing. So I shall see you later when all this is lined up, ready to go. And then maybe in the next half of this week I will figure out if anybody does want to sell me a duplicate scratch plate, or whether I'll just go with the original white one again, because I want to get this piece playing, because it deserves to be. It's a beautiful old thing. It's got some scabby holes in it where it's been dropped or banged, but generally speaking it still looks really nice. And of course the Korina wood is pretty. Okay, I'm going to hit the radio, listen to something and get on with this job. See you later. So here we are in the land of the fretting press thing, and I'm just checking everything's in place. Got my first fret over here, and what I'm going to do, you won't see it very well, but I'm going to get a little blob of the old, what am I going to do? I'm going to do a tiny bit of glue on either end, which is then going to go on my fingers, no doubt. Yep. And then I'm going to do a little bead, if I can. Oh, it's quite runny, this stuff. down the side of the fret and poke it down here with this stick thing, cocktail stick, and then I'm going to bring it to the right place. Now I've got lights shining all over here, and it's not the greatest lighting rig I've ever had, and I'm not sure how well these want to go in. I'm just trying to line up as closely as I can to begin with, and then come down to meet the fret, and it's gone for a walk. So it probably needs a bit of a hit to get in. And the trouble with this is that it does depend now on getting this placed correctly. So I really have to make sure this goes in correctly in the first instance. So there we go, right down. Now I have lost I had a bit of stretchy thing which I was going to use, and I haven't figured out a way to do this yet, so I think I'm going to need, I'll just hold this by hand for the time being, I'm going to need a big bolt in the bottom down there and something to stop this sliding around. Let's try it on the end here. Yeah, that will not go anywhere. Okay, so the idea is that I'll have this on a bit of a clamp. Now, while I'm also at it, I'm going to get a poking device of sorts and just run it down the edge here to get rid of any excess glue. A little bit difficult on this side because there's a sticking out grub screw which I could chop off actually, probably make things a bit easier. Anyway, so this is nicely squeezed down. Now, what I don't know at the moment about this guitar is I don't quite know how much different the tang size is. It appears to be about right. I've measured as close as I can. It's very difficult to measure, but as close as I can I've measured it, and it seems about right. So with luck we won't get any spectacular bending of the neck. If it's way off or considerably off, what you can result in is you force the neck to bow backwards a bit. But I haven't had that actually happen to me, mainly because these things have been close enough to begin with. Okay, so I'm just giving that a squeeze down. The super glue touch is a pretty quick way of doing this. You never know what the battery's like. It says it's good on this. I'm just going to pull this off for a second and fly you around here so you can see bright lights, so you can see the state of this, and it's nice. It doesn't extend anywhere, and I can tidy the ends up. It's pretty accurate. Okay, so there we have our first jumbo fret in the Epiphone Korina, and I can do a whole set of these, taking great care to move my little portable stand along as I go, and maybe twist this around a bit. So it's all a bit of a move it all about sort of thing. I have this set up here, so technically I could attach it to the side of the lamp. Oh, look at that, for new technology. I suppose I theoretically would go and plug the battery thing in as well, but you can be right down here. Although the lighting, to be quite honest, the lighting for me is rubbish at that point. So if I were to find what we've got here, let's try and see if this is going to make things a bit brighter. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, we have all the lights in the world on, everything brighter. Right, so I can go with the second one now. So grab my second fret, turn it round, tiny dab on the end bit, which goes on my fingers. I have to be careful with it. It's hard to, it's almost impossible though to hold the fret without that happening, and the danger is it will go onto the, because I can't not hold it now. The danger is that it'll, if I'm not careful, it'll over stretch onto the edge of the thing, whatever that thing is, neck. Okay, so oh yikes, this isn't one to sit down either. Again, it is a bit of a tight fit, so we may be pushing this. So I'm going to push my all my bits and bobs along here, make sure everything moves at the same time approximately, and then come down on top of the thing where I need to and give it a squeeze down. Okay, and that one's down nicely. Again, rub off the excess if possible. And we can again look at it once we've lifted it. In between the next one I will go ahead and screw in a big, oh you're over there now, I forgot where you were. I'm going to screw in put in a big screw that hopefully I can just put the bungee on, and then we'll get a good squeeze down on it. But so that's the principle. It's not, this thing is just slightly lifting. We need a bit more fraction more height. Not a lot though. Something certain, not very thick thinness to lift up. Just need to lift up. It's too thick. Not very many very thin things anywhere. That's not there. Could it be in this box here? So that. Let's try a bit of this. Yeah, just about. Okay, I'll just pull that out of the way. So what I need to make this work, I hold that there, is I need a big screw thing down the bottom there, which I shall now whack in to the leg of the thing. And I suppose it's got to be pretty chunky. So what way do I need it to go? It's got to be down, I've got to hook it down. We'll see, I don't know. Just to get a sort of sense of how far we can stretch this to put it under a decent load. Okay, somewhere like that. I'll do. Hold that there. And put it on an angle. Good. That's strong enough. So we pull this down to here and hook it there. Fabulous. Well, we have our mechanised thingy, which means I have to bend down to release it, but so what? Okay. There's a bit of dangling wire everywhere. So everything has to move along as I go. That's not so bad. I've got loads of tissue paper here. I've got what I've got in this little bottle. I know you can't see very well, but I've got debonder, so it's very good for getting in there and removing any excess glue that happened to spill out while we were squeezing it down. Okay, so again, the lighting is difficult here. Sorry, you're going to get pointed at the sky while I have a quick look. It appears to be fixing well. Let me just move this out of the way and have a close look in normal light. Yeah. Okay. I still feel the end, those two are maybe a fraction long for my liking, but this is a first go, so I'm gonna be learning how it goes as we go. Whoops, push this, place this where I need it, push the blocks forward a bit, pull that back a bit, line up for my next fret, and so on and so on. So I won't do this for too long, because it's just going to repeat. Let's try this another way. I'm going to do down the sides first, load the sides a little bit, and then dab a tiny bit on the end. Still going to go on my fingers, so there's no way around this. Okay. Clean my fingers on the carpet. Ugh. Again, this, like I say, this is a bit of a how long is a bit of string going on here now. Sort of grab it by hand. And it's wanted to fall over sideways. There's a slight curve in the kink in the end of these tangs as well, where they've been cut, which is making it just a tiny bit harder than it needs to be. Hello. See if I can get this in the right place. Down you go. And the whole thing's got to be moved, you see, to get the neck in the right place. Right, that feels good. That went down there. Stuck on very well. All good. So that's all held. It gives me free rein to do the other bits, to clean off any excess. If you use this stuff, the debonder, just be careful that you don't kind of glug it everywhere, because it will eventually debond the fret as well. But it also, if it goes on your paintwork, I think it tends to dissolve it. So it doesn't need a too long a thing. I wonder if there's a quick way of doing it. Oops, let's take the plastic bit off the end. Hook it on there. Yeah, maybe that's the right way. Lift that off. Again, get in there and a quick scrub up. Yeah, I mean it's a first off. You know, the lengths of these things they're pretty good. They may not be absolutely perfect, but it's quite a lot better than the prospect of scraping the living daylights out of the frets to trim them down like I've always had to do. So I'm very pleased just simply not to be doing that part of it in the old way. So I think the overall pluses are going to outweigh the minuses by some distance. It's hard to get these things to set in. This one is very exact. Make sure it's across in this place. And move the whole lot along. Very crude. I don't have a sophisticated method for this. I have to tell you, you can guess. So this is definitely about pushing and pulling and moving, just being aware of where things all are, so that they're not having to, I'm not in risk of, oh, wrong side. Yeah, just have to know where everything is. Should be on the other side of this lump, really. Like that. Okay. So, you know, the first time of doing it this way is seeing it live. So it's not going to be perfected, but it's not too bad. And this is a familiar process to clean up. And the idea of the rubbery dubbery thing is probably looking somewhere really useless. Okay, so you can probably guess that I got to about here and I can't go any further. So I'm going to need to make what I'll do is I'll use a plank, and I will put that against the body and against this, and we'll end up with a sort of buttress or a brace, so I can put pressure on it without bending the neck in the wrong sort of way. Again, it'll go in a bit further and give it a clean. So I'm pleased to be at this point without the prospect of having to use that horrible thing. You know, and feeling your way to getting the fret in the right place is not an exact science. So sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it may not. So I'm just using my skills and judgments. In reality, that little bit of extra glue on the end probably doesn't do much, given that I'm not even sure that that piece of metal even touches down that hard on this when this fret is pushed all the way in. That's tilted on the side, so I'm going to go. The other thing, of course, is if you're fretting something like this, and if the tangs are too big, then what you will get, as I said before, is that bit of a back bow, which you may or may not be able to correct, depending on what your truss rod can do. But the only alternative in that would be to pull these, pull these frets really, and redo them. But you'd have to cut. See, it doesn't want to go in properly. You'd have to recut the slots to accommodate, which would then obviously lose you the end tangs as well. So quite a different process then. Okay, so I mean, I don't think that's too tight. It's a little tighter than some, but then quite often the ones I work on are loose. But we'll be able to see as we get halfway down. How's the battery looking? Well, it's looking good for a change. Okay, so I need to probably rethink the position of this whole jig so that I don't end up with the Korina V falling off onto the floor as I move it along. So it is all a little bit home rigged. And the business of doing a set neck like this is a bit harder. A detachable neck, obviously, you can push it all through the press very quickly and without any problem. But with a set neck or an acoustic neck, you start to run into more of a challenge. A little bit further we can still go on this one. I better go and check in the house because I'm expecting delivery of a new Rally, well, second-hand Rally GL 250, which I bought because I'd seen it kicking around on eBay for ages, and it's a sort of a Les Paul, not special, not special, I don't know. It's the sort of, I'm going to say junior, but that's the wrong word too. It's like a Les Paul, only not the big heavyweight body thing, and it's actually got 24 frets on it, this thing, so it's, in a sense, it's not like a Les Paul. I'm struggling to get this thing to even stand up, to get it into position, and that's the difficulty here. If I can't get this thing into position, I'm going to struggle to press it down, and that's the where it does differ from doing it the other way. The other way is you can kind of let it stick out either side. You don't really need to be so particular about its positioning, because when you don't mind how much sticks out either side, really. There we go. Oops, I've lost my. I'm going to do that like this. Yeah, the old way has got more flexibility, so this does constrain you a bit, but hopefully it's going to make a neater overall finish. That's what I'm aiming for. Alright, well look, there's some gunge which you can get off scrape off the caul, or the insert I should say. Right, okay, I'm going to save you the misery of watching the rest of that. This thing, I don't know what I'm going to do about this, because it's not a good join for me. That's okay, that's actually pen, but there's a gap here which this is struggling to I don't know how to do this. I'll put you here for a second, on your side. Hold on a sec while I just give this a crank. So I've been giving this a bit of a squeeze whenever I can, in the hope of squeezing it together a bit more. But as you can see, we've got glue coming out. Yeah, it might work as long as it stays together. I'm not too worried about the slight difference in thickness. We shall see. Anyway, I'm going to put you back up on there and plug you in. Right, oh, let's take this off, clean off any excess. This bit isn't quite far enough away, this screw, to stop it falling off down there. So, quickly rectify this, brushes off, finds chunky screw, grabs a screwdriver. So we need one sticking out. Blimey, where do we need it? It needs to be there. Oh, the joy of just, that's a bit better. The joy of just putting things together like that. Okay. Clean and then move on to the next one. So you can see it's reasonable progress, but it's the fact that these are already cut to size means there's so much less of that end beveling and stuff that I've got to do, obviously, and for all not, you know, it saves time in that department, but it also obviously saves the destructiveness that comes with that other process, which I'm keen to avoid now. So hopefully this is all going to work tickety-boo, as they say. Stuff on my fingers, stuff off my fingers, stuff on the fingerboard. Again, this trusting that we're close to where we want it to be, fraction further along that way. Just need it to be on enough to be able to get that first press down and in the right position too. Come on, you can do it. Yeah, just got that one. Didn't want to for a second, but then it did. Okay. And I need to reposition things in a moment, so I'll stop the vid any second now. And reposition it. Chuck away some bits of paper and some gunged up sticks. The thing I'll do is I'll turn the press round closer as well. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean you to be subject to this dazzling light. I will stop the thing in a minute. I will. I swear I will. Okay, so just like this little clamp thing off. I'm going to hold these two bits and turn all of this as a single unit. Move this along. I might need, do I need any more? No, it's okay. It needs to be around in that angle, which means this has to come, sorry about that, this has to come out here a bit. So again, you can see it's all a bit about getting it in position before we can get onto the next bit, and then the third bit will be outside of the press altogether. I'm just holding that in position so it doesn't jump forward. Now this of course changes how that works. Anyway, right, so just check my various blocks and stuff, that's all in good shape. Now my frets are going for a bit of a walk over there. Have to be careful I don't mess up the order of them. Right, one more and then I promise I'll stop. One more, ends, sides. Just looking at this one, there's not a lot of overhang here. Oops. So I hope that will go down. Push it back out of the way a little bit. Where are you, slot? Thank you. whole lot a little bit closer and then try and line up the thing first. Nice. Of course, moving that has substantially changed the dynamic of my elastic band, but in the normal position it will work. Lots of pre-cut bits of tissue paper ready for rescuing the glue. Ooh, where can I put that up there? Is that one? That's going to pull that way and that's going to come flying off. Yep, no good. Where can I attach this? It's not good. On the floor, that's where I'm going to attach it. It's official. Oh, I'm nearly out of the, what do you call that stuff? Debonder. I've got several more pots, which is good. I would buy it in bulk from the old local. Yeah, nearly done. The local man. Bit stuck on the top there, but we'll get rid of that. So it's looking good. I think you can see. I guess that, like I said, the question is to what degree, if any, is this going to cause a bow? You need to be conscious of that. See it against something I can see it again. No, it's okay. It's not causing a problem, which is good. So there's my supporting blocks. Just get everything back in place. You'll check out the positioning, just about right. Everything's stable, good. I think that's done. The bonder will be finished. Another one. Thank you. Okay, next fret. Oh, I said I'd stop now, but I can't do it. I just can't stop. I will stop. I'll do this one. No, I'm already going, and then I'll stop. I need a cup of tea. It's the sun actually coming out outside, which is amazing. While I'm doing this, I'm busy thinking to myself, how am I going to sand that wingy stuff? Because it looks like it's going to put up a fight. Ah, crap. Got some on the side there. Come on, off you come. Thank you. Okay, push into place, fractionally, wiggle, wiggle. On you go. Down you go. Yeah, so I need to work out how I'm going to do that sanding, because that stuff is mighty sand resistant. It appears, and it's hard going, but it's a beautiful material. I mean, I've never worked anything like that before. I'm not very experienced in woods anyway, so these particular set of oak casters are the first ones I'm doing with any kind of significantly different wood tops. That's not true actually. I did the redwood, giant redwood topped ones, and I suppose some of the oak ones have got two different kinds of oak in them, so it isn't true entirely. Yeah, off comes the plastic bit. Put that there. It's still going to hold it. Now it's going to throw it. Oh, just there. It's going to fall off. Yeah, so it's really interesting having a material that you don't know very well. But by all accounts, it's going to should look great when it's done, because I've got a piece inside that I just oiled, a spare offcut that I oiled up, and it's quite remarkable how it looks. And it's got this sort of light, it's very dark obviously, and then it's got a light grain, a slightly lighter grain that runs, oh look, here's me doing another one, slightly lighter grain running through it, and it's kind of prone to cracking if it's in thin sheets, or well, I've got it in about 18mm top, so it's still showing signs of cracks running up from the base or the bottom part of it. I don't know what makes it bottom and what makes it top exactly, but it is showing signs of crack. Fingers stuck together brilliantly. Move our whole lot forward. Now this one, let's get it close as we can get. Come on, on you go. In you go. That's good. Keep that under tension. Grab it. Lovely. Okay. Yeah. So it's. I've tried to do a bit of sanding to it, and it seems at this point to be quite resistant to it. Although I managed to sand a piece that I did do the oiling on, so it will sand up nice. But I think I have to do it manually to begin with as rough a grade of sandpaper as I can possibly use, followed by a machine sanding, you know, orbital sandering for as long as I can. Be bothered to do it, but the payoff is going to be great because it's some mysterious looking stuff. And I read while I was first working it that apparently it's the splinters are septic. That's a funny way of describing it, but apparently if you get them in your fingers, they make your fingers septic quickly. So of course it has to be beautifully smoothed, and for a finished guitar it can't go anywhere in any state of, you can't have any possible scratches at all. Alright, so I can only get up to about there, so I'm going to stop now, and I won't bother showing you the jig. It'll just be a bit of an ugly looking load of stuff, but it will do the job. I'll come back when these are all in, and then this will probably just sit again for a while now until I figure out what's happening with the scratch plate, and I'll get on with the other ones. So, hey there, just a quick check-in at this point. You can see that I now have all of the frets, a little bit of spilt glue that I've got to clear up. All the frets pressed into this guitar. There are 2 or 3 that I don't like the look of, just personally. They seem to not go in quite as far as I'd like. They are firmly in, and it may be that I just take care of them as part of the fret leveling process. Visually I can't see that they immediately stand out an absolute country mile from the others, but you never know. We'll see. Maybe it's just an optical thing going on. So yeah, just looking up and down, it's I like the approach. I've rounded off the ends. They're still not completely smooth, but I'll do a bit more work indoors with the smaller file, and then I'll prepare to smooth all of this stuff out in the subsequent fret leveling process. There are 1 or 2, I can just look here and see that they just are sitting up a tiny bit at the ends, but they're all right. It's just that, I think it's that one there. It could even be that the fingerboard is actually flatter at this point here than I actually, in fact it might well be the fact that it's a little bit darker here. Maybe didn't actually re-round this bit off. It may have stayed flatter in the middle just here, but we'll see when we come to do the precision fret leveling, and it will take care of it either which way. But not bad looking, with a nice new set of jumbo frets shining away, and beautifully. I don't have to do any of that sort of horrible destructive stuff that I used to have to do, so I'm really pleased about that. Oh, in the way is the beautiful, just freshly set up Rally GL 250, which is coming to band practice with me tomorrow because it's just so good. Hey, welcome to Real Love Guitars, back with the thing, the Korina V. Just for your information, I just pulled out some of the frets and replaced them with some other ones at this end. They weren't sitting right, so I wasn't happy with it. So they're gone, they're history, and some better seated ones are there in their place. Anyway, I've set the action at this end. I've gone for a low actually 1.2 millimeters here and 1 over there, so it's very, very low. So it's a real challenge, shall we say. I'm going to go with tens on this, so I'm going to get my action setting what fits for ready for a 10s. I'm also just going to check the neck relief on this. It's tuned now. It's a funny old thing, this. I'm kind of in two minds about it. I didn't like the old scratch plate because it was slightly damaged. Actually, there's enough, that's good. So I changed it out for this brass one, which doesn't follow the lines quite as well, but I quite like it, and I've mocked up a brass cover for this plastic bit down here, so it's all in the brass mode at the moment, so I thought I'd leave it. And if somebody doesn't like it, I'll send them the t'other one as well. They can switch it back at some point. So I'm going to go with my 10 set here. So last on the list I'll have a 48, I'll have a 17 to 24, I'll have a 36 to 42, I'll have a 26 to 32, 17 to 24, we got that. I'll have 10 to 13, and then one a 13 to 17, which is there. So that's my set. I think they're very close, these slots on the nuts. I'm just going to double check that, really, more than anything. To get these frets in, I basically used the saw. The problem with this end of the thing at the neck is that conventionally you can't clamp it without making a jig of some sort, and actually even with that, by trying to preserve the binding or the fills down the edge, I wasn't able to clean out the slot as much as I would like, really. I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to in the end. So what I did was I used the fret saw on that and just cut it through, which means I'm going to need to do little fills with some lacquer in the end there, which is fine. It just takes a little bit of extra work, but I'd rather do that in order to get the it's just more important to get the frets seated well. Okay, we're on the mark there. Yeah, it's better. It's important to get more important to get the frets seated properly. So that's the price we pay. In this case, I used the hammer, fret hammer, and a caul. A mixture of hammering and caul, with the neck supported carefully directly under the hammer point. But it was it's a different approach, but it worked fine. And the frets were pre-shaped off the guitar on the wheel, so I don't have to kind of do the edging. They're also cut in slightly so that we can afford them to expand over time. They still need tidying up, but that's close as I want to get with that. Actually, it's very, very near. Well, a tiny bit. I'm just going to do it just for the point of view of making sure the width is correct as much as anything else for the set of 10s that are going to go in there. That'll be good. So just there's one slightly high one there, which we'll need to take care of, but yeah, difficult to redo on an old guitar that's been fretted once in the past, and I suppose just because the slots pick up gunge and it can be very challenging to clean them out. Right, that's about on the mark. I don't want to do anything with that. I may already have done this. I suspect I already have. Looking at the height of these, I don't need to do anything with these at all. Right, leave that. Okay, we can get on with the fret leveling. Interestingly, the string spread on this guitar makes it quite a difficult one to get free running. Sorry, I'm trying to get that thing. Get free running slots, because on both ends of the guitar there's quite a pull sideways. That's the nature of the V-shaped guitar, I guess. It's a bit of an odd headstock. It's a bit of an overblown headstock, to be honest. Okay, so I'm going to use this this one. This one I think already begins with a bit of a slight curve on it, so it's not great for very, very low radius, no not radius, low relief guitars, because it's almost, I'd have to bend it a bit flatter to get it to work. Okay, that starts off looking good. So I'll go with this first strip and let's see what we hit at the top end. I'm expecting to hit an uneven fret right at the top there, a high one I should say, more than anything. This is a slightly wider tool, but it's also happens to be quite rigid, so that's pretty good. So I've got it set at a very low challenging action. Actually that's cleared that already, so that's not bad. Difficult one to play this. I'm not going to do any more, that's enough. So it's taken off the high bit that's causing the choking. So it shows me that the replacement frets are pretty good and they're already in, pretty well seated where they should be. So the first and second strip I tend to do to the same relief calibration. And just again, I can see it's taking, there's 2 frets there that haven't gone in massively well, but they are, in fact they're old ones. I didn't pull those, so that explains a lot. Okay, I'll hold on that too. Don't want to go more than I need. This is a really low action, so it's a bit over the top in terms of challenging the fret levelness, but I don't mind doing that because I enjoy that sort of challenge. Okay, so that's pretty much spot on still. So move on to the G track. Oh, see how much that's pulling sideways. It's quite funny that it's actually cutting heavily on 2 frets that I didn't pull out today. In fact, it's the last 2 in the old sequence, but we'll take care of that with this levelling and that will be no problem. Just kind of feel intuitively how much you need to do, and it comes with experience. I cut myself several times today in different things. A tiny bit more. Yeah, it is just a matter of you get used to how much it needs, and then you'll, I don't know, just sort of guess at it really, and something tells you you're there and you stop like that. That's just exactly enough. So recalibrate on this one. So this shouldn't be too difficult now to get a nice playing action out of this, and I'm going to kind of aim to have this finished today. It's just been sitting around for a while. Sort of, you can probably tell from the previous video clips, but I'm slightly annoyed at the plate that I had cut, but because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I still think it looks quite cool. I prefer it to the white, even if the lines aren't strictly geometrically correct, which they certainly aren't, but and I think I've learned a bit about the whole thing about sending something off for somebody to cut, because in both cases I've got it horribly wrong by sending off drawings and not having a way of double checking them. Or not adequately double checking them. One of them was for the Oakcaster templates that I had made up at no small expense, and that cost me a fair packet, and they were rubbish, they were wrong, they were small, and this one was, for some reason I drew it from scratch with a load, I took a load of physical measurements and actually just drew it out from scratch, and that would have got a better fit if I'd have just drawn around the original and sent that, but I don't know why, what possessed me to do it. They they kept saying they needed a technical drawing, so for some reason I did it in, was it Illustrator or something, from scratch, rather than what I should have done was just drawn around it and sent it in Photoshop and said, look, there's the best. I scanned what I drew around and say, look, there's the best, closest representation. Put that in your CNC pipe and smoke it. And I didn't, so we have an odd shaped thing, but it looks pretty cool despite the weird angles. I can live with that if you can. Right, just going to check this playable, A for playability. A little bit more up there. That's right off the side, that is. Well done. So yeah, I'll be very happy to offer this one up to anyone who's interested, just because it's been taking up a bit of space. It's been kind of taunting me, really, sitting in the shed. It's big, so it taunts you in a roomy sort of manner, it gets in your way, basically. So I'll go to some appreciative new home, and of course it's going to take quite a bit in the way of cardboard to package it up. I sort of anticipate it, really, but that's the lucky thing about making my own cardboard boxes as I do. It means I can, it's not really that much of a problem to construct one to fit this and support its little V-shaped limbs. Okay, this is the last strip. Now this is working with 220 grit, so it's quite, I think it's 220, it's quite hungry. It's quite good when you've got new frets on and you just want to get down to level, not in a hurry exactly, but without too much ado. Okay, so there's, I can see the two that were sort of a bit off the mark, but the rest are okay, so that's good. Tiny little bit right up there. Give it one more go and then I'll be done. It'll be time to polish out. I'll say a little bit of filler to go in the end there, which I'll make up with a rosewood resin gluey stuff, which I've used on other guitars now, which is quite good. So you can see where it's cut quite a bit on that, but that's going to be done and dusted. So what I'm going to do now is take off the strings and just move straight into the re-profiling. These strings can now go in the bin, but I'll use 10s. I've got my 10s there for the next, or for the re-string after we've cleaned up. This thing's got CTS pots, it's got orange drop 0.22 capacitor, CTS full-size pots, and I basically rewired it today using mostly, in fact, if not all, shielded wire for the live wires, and it's also shielded in the cavities as well. I'm just using the plate as a conductor, but the bridge is also double insured, you know what I mean, the word is thingied, earthed, double earthed. Okay, so these can go goodbye. Through body stringing here for a moment. A bit of an ungainly beast this, so I'm just going to take that off for now. Even if the action moves, the wheels move, then it's I can reset it at any time. I did that in fact the other day. What happened? Brian bought my SG Columbus SG, my kind of refurbished Columbus, and I took it apart and cleaned it all up the day before sending it, and I didn't put it back quite at the right action, so it was by the time he got it, was catching on some residual underlying unevenness on an A string, which I was a bit disappointed in, because I hate overlooking things like that. It was easy enough to just raise it back to where I'd done the action setting, but I hate that first impression when you've gone to so much trouble to get it right. I think the thing I learned from that as well is that I was rushing to meet a deadline that I had, or some time constraints that I had. In fact, he wasn't in the same kind of rush that I was, so it was kind of down to me needing to get it out the door, which is again slightly annoying. So I have to kind of try to remember not to put myself under that time pressure in future. Just give myself that extra time to sort of play it through and so on. But it's funny that, because it tends to be the case with guitars that I sell. You know, it's only ever with the sold guitars that occasionally have come across a couple of things that I could do with a retweak before they go out, and it's usually me putting myself under pressure for dispatch timing. And interestingly, it's far less likely or common than with customer guitars, because they follow a sort of different kind of routine. Anyway, just to get this reshaped, so I'm just using this jumbo side of this StewMac file, and I'm just taking off any sharp edge, shoulder if you like, of the fret, with the idea of just reshaping it as much as possible, so that it returns to as close to an arch shape as it can be, before we polish it out a bit later on. And some of them hardly been touched at all, so they don't take more than a couple of swipes to get where you want them to be. And just stop, because we don't want to take them down any lower than they currently are, because to do that would be to upset the careful fret leveling that we've achieved by going through what we just did. And then when ones we have flattened more, take a little bit more work. You can see that little line of, I can see the little line of marker pen down the middle, and we just basically work catching my finger. I'm not doing very well today in wounds and injuries, but anyway, the idea is to just cut away with the file until we've rounded it back off where it should be. And the good thing about reshaping it like that, returns the intonation point of the fret to the centre top, which is where it needs to be for the most accurate intonation. To be fair, it isn't that big a deal, even if it's off a tiny bit. I mean, the distance we're talking about there is very small, but it could be, if you've taken a quite, you know, any extreme leveling, it could be as much as 1 millimetre or 2, which can change things. Hey, it's that lovely tea lady.
It's my tea.
Oh.
I thought you had one not
It's a lovely tea lady. He hasn't brought me
Tealess
anything
lady.
for a change. Oh well. I'm just finishing this. I pulled some
Flying the V.
I pulled some frets here because I just didn't like them anymore, and replaced them using a hammer. And the two here I didn't pull needed more work than anything else. But
why didn't you pull them as well then?
Because I kind of went from the point where I thought actually I should have gone there, but it don't matter. I've got them to where I need them. But these were done. This lot were done with a kind of clamp arrangement with the hand clamps and stuff. And actually, this time I just hammered them in with the coil, or the brass thing and the hammer, which is a different technique again. But it worked, and now I've got a 1 millimetre action out of it, which is pretty low for one of these. But just leaving the ends. I mean, it's not perfect condition anyway. It's an old guitar, but I wanted the frets to be as good as possible. which I think they are now.
That's the bit you play.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
What?
I think quite a lot of the teenagers' angst has been girl trouble. I've just heard.
Don't find out, sorry. Girl trouble. Uh-huh. What you just heard as in you overheard or you were confided in?
Overheard.
Oh, right. Don't give anything too much away. Go on, tell us all.
No.
What trouble has a girl caused him, it? She stood me up, she's messed me around.
Yeah.
And we pay for it.
Well, that's the nature of heartbreak.
I know,
isn't
it's
it?
the nature of teenagers as well.
Yeah, like you remember.
Anyway, for those of you who think I'm a beast and don't answer the Skype calls to my dad, by the way, I just answered the phone to him in town, like I regularly do, the Skype call. He calls me, he knows, he has a sixth sense, and he knows when I'm in the cafe in the market getting my weekly dose of cheesy chips, and while I'm picking up my masking tape and whatnot. And so he called me there today, and I said to him, I said, Dad, either you're psychic and you know when I'm here, or I'm here all the time, but either which way. So I took him on a walk around the market like I regularly do, and I placed him on the dashboard of the car facing outwards while I drove to the post office to send him, right, my old dad that I don't care about, to send him a mug and a coaster from Bob's Cafe, because he thinks he's practically a resident, because he's always calling me on Skype while I'm there. So for those of you who think I'm an absolute beast, I'm not, I promise. I think I've got that out of my protesting too much system.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm also going to go.
How badly do you feel when you don't pick up the phone when it's your pops?
I'm also going to go and.
How easy is it to poke you when you?
I'm also
about
going
it?
to go and father sit him for a week in July, so that my stepmom can go on holiday. And that's no small matter for those of you who can imagine what looking after a chap who's had a stroke is like.
She does it every day for
Yeah, I know she does, but she's
12
she
years.
married him anyway. So I'm going to go and do that. I know I used to make the mistake as a man of going. Somebody would say to me, "Oh, can you come and do this lecture or something?" I go, "Oh no, I'm babysitting the kids," and they go, "You're not babysitting; they're your own kids."
Yeah, exactly.
I know. So I'm father sitting, but it's not father sitting because it's your own dad. So anyway, just wanted to show
Well,
that.
how about just being with him?
I'm going to go and hang out with him and wipe his bum. But anyway, the point is, I'm not a swine and I don't ignore him much. Except he always rings when I'm about to try and type an email or take a photograph, and he's so annoying. And I've said to him, Dad, when you ring and I kind of cancel the call on you, don't call straight away immediately back, because I'm probably trying to do an email or take a photograph. So he phones me straight back, just as I'm still trying to take the same photograph.
The thing is, you can't disconnect from that ringing. That's the problem.
No, because it cancels my email. That's why it comes up over the top of the email. I can't do anything.
But just leave it to ring then.
Yeah, I do, and then I curse a bit. And anyway, I do love my old dad, and I do take care of him. All right, so.
And he adores you.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying, doesn't it? He was very impressed. He was very impressed because when I went in the market, I was actually very impressed. In the market today, I went to Paul, who's my DIY man and my parts and bits and bobs, my tape man. And I went for my fix of masking tape and sandpaper and glue and Gorilla Tape and whatnot. And he goes, oh look, and he pointed at his till. On the front of his till, he's got a Reloved Guitar sticker with Morris's face. And my dad was on Skype at the time when I was buying my stuff, and I showed him, and he was very impressed as well. So, you know, my dad, the one I answer the Skype calls to. Anyway, so go back.
He's like this all the time, you know.
So go back
honestly,
to the teenager.
Honestly,
go back to the teenager.
He really is.
Go back to the teenager and the girl.
So I don't know. I figure it's probably Pippa.
Censor that out later.
And this relationship has never been
Is she
real.
she the one in Scotland?
Yeah.
Right.
They've never met each other in the physical real.
God, like modern
Just,
Japanese kids.
just manga.
But they still
Comics.
seem to have possession issues.
Yeah, well, they still seem to have feelings. My possession.
Yeah, where was it we met? Do you remember?
Hmm?
Where was it that you and I met? Do you
Yeah,
remember?
I know. Let me think.
On the internet.
On the internet. Yeah, but we did
RussianBrides.com.
Yeah.
RichRussianHusbands.com.
Mostra, whatever it is.
Das Vidania.
Yeah.
Find me a musician husband.com. No, a real one. Luthia's wives. Don't call me a Luthia anyway. My brother did that the other day. He said, "My
No,
Luthia."
he was calling you something else. You just heard.
No.
As
He said he did. He tried to be really good for me. He tried to plug one of my Oakcasters on Facebook because there was a picture of him holding it at our stepmom's birthday the other day, and so he very kindly did his thing of promoting me by posting on his extensively befriended timeline a picture of him playing his brother, my Luthia brother's homemade Oakcaster.
He's a celeb, you know.
Yeah, but then the
touch from Steve.
But then the first thing, the first and only comment that his superb friends had to say was, "Is your brother a midget?" or something like that. Some really clever thing. Or is he still at primary school? It's a bit small. And Steve, bless him, went back and said, "It is a travel guitar." You know, only Land of the Giants and all kinds of stupid jokes followed. But there you go. So, real life. Anyway, so tonight I've got to pack up the Telecaster, or the single cut familiar historic style guitar.
Yes.
As eBay would have it.
They'll come and get you. There's eBay spies. They'll hear.
The guy Ed was buying it and bought it. He said something like, his opening lines of his eBay note after he bought it was, "Telecaster, Telecaster, Telecaster." There, doesn't it feel good to say it? So that's quite knowing.
So silly.
But yeah, I'm not allowed to say it, so
No, I heard somebody else say that too.
I can't remember. But yeah, it's
Everybody must know by now. Look at this.
I know it's a mess. It's a mess. I'm waiting for one sunny day when I haven't got anything to do, and I'm going to tidy it all up. I swear to God.
Yeah, we had a couple of those.
I know, but I was
yesterday.
working and I had too many guitars to
Yeah,
do.
working on your time.
No. It's not true. It's not true. But I am going to spring clean actually, because I need to clean out all the dead mice from here as well.
There
And the
is
spiders.
definitely a dead mouse in our house. I can't
Okay,
find it.
the caveat to this is we have 3 cats at the moment. Normally we have 4, but one's gone on walkabout. So we have 3 cats, and it's the spring season, and they like to bring in things, including a shrew that I rescued yesterday, and it bit me 4 times in a row. I'm grateful.
And
Little.
noticed he started getting pointy nose and whiskers.
And grateful little swine as well.
He just wanted to escape.
I know. But he climbed up
Where are these from?
it could be from inside, but he kept climbing up the wastebasket, so I never actually got him as far as the hedgerows down there.
Really good climber.
And he was definitely on his.
He was
on his
tiny, wasn't he? As well?
Yeah, he was more kind of he was more hell bent on escaping than quite a few that we've had. But anyway,
Yeah, most of them are really stunned, aren't they? By the time they've been caught.
some of them are a little less healthy than others, but he was in good shape. He took off pretty well. Right. So I've got the boring sandpaper.
Anyway, so the thing is, that one got caught, but there's another one that I'm pretty sure didn't.
Has died and
I can smell it.
not gone to heaven.
No, it's definitely not gone to heaven. I can't find it.
They don't clean up, do they? They sort of let it die, and then that's it. They move on to other fun things.
And if I thought I cleaned up. Hello.
Didn't realise you were in there. We're talking about you. Can't even have a secret conversation about the cats.
Hello.
Yes, sorry.
Why are you all wet? Mouse.
Mickey. Oh yeah, somebody said to me, same guy actually said to me, though, Disney will be on to me for my Aristocats next.
Yeah,
Of course they will.
yeah.
That's
But
all right.
You could spell it W-R-I-T.
Yeah, Aristocats with a K. And then I can also just stop doing them anyway, so it's not like exactly the end of the world, is it? Let the corporations bully the little guy. Yeah, bring it on. I wasn't saying that anyway. Don't mind. This is.
Did you want some tea then?
No, it's all right.
You back on the Did you go to sleep there?
No,
then?
I've not really seen him hide out there. That's a new one on me.
Oh, because your headphones are in the way.
That's cool though. He's finding a new place. No, only if you're making some in a while, but don't go out of your way. That's all right. Don't worry.
I just felt the kettle and it was still really hot.
Oh yeah, I had one earlier, but right, here we go.
Alright.
Oh, that's no good. Look, it's just torn that off already. That's too low tack. And let's get it right. Right. Time to polish out the frets.
You just got one to pack tonight.
One to pack, yeah. Going to Ed. I have got enough cardboard finally. What I have
Do
to
you
do.
think Malcolm will be able to keep getting that?
I guess he could. I mean, it's not much to ask him.
He said there were 3 Hellbites shops in Weybridge.
Yeah,
so
it's a perfect place for it. Okay,
Right.
let's get on to this. All right, love.
It's open.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to, in fact, get off, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just soften up the ends of these few frets here that I've added today, and then I'm going to sand them smooth in the overall sanding process, which is what reminded me to do this now. And so what I'll do is I'll just tidy up these, or soften up these ends now, and then I'll go over the whole lot with 3 grades of paper, which is 600 to 1000 to 15, and then I'll switch to the micro mesh set, which I'll do, which runs from 1500 through to 12,000, and then by the time I get there, that will be lovely and shiny. But then as a final thing, I'll do a going over with Autosol Chrome Cleaner as a final shine up for these frets. Okay, so just making sure these are soft as they can be at this point, which they are. Right, so I'll see you back when it's done and I'm restringing the old girl and giving it a play. Ooh. Oh, and we are back. We are back. Frets cleaned, shined, polished, levelled, fretboard oiled, bridge in place, new strings on, strings, oh yay, strings, winding, wind on. So this guitar has been deliberately left in its used grubby state. In other words, I haven't tried to polish anything up. There was a moment where oh, it's gone down. How come that went down? That's not fair. Ooh, hiss. Got to wind it up. There was a moment where I know my mate Dave was thinking about, or suggesting it should be steampunked. Let me just get this one right before I put the others on. Yeah, suggesting it should be kind of a steampunk finish. Blimey, that's a bit low. But no, go the other way, fool. But I think I didn't want to put too much time into it, really. So I've gone for it's kind of original, authentic, and relatively road worn and steampunk, but not too self-consciously steampunk, I suppose is the way. And that hence the idea of the brass scratch plate. But it didn't in the end work out quite the way I intended, but didn't too bad. Anyway, this neck is soaking up the oil like nobody's business, because it's always the way when you refret something and re-radius the fingerboard, it always dries out the neck something rotten. So actually, you know, given everything, I was very pleased with the action I got just then with the fret leveling. It's pretty incredibly light and low, but we'll see how it plays when we've got it all up to full tension and so on. And with a neck like this as well, once it's been re-radiused, I tend to find that it needs an oil every time the strings are changed for the next, well, I don't know, you know, next couple of string changes anyway, because it tends to dry out pretty quick. Depends of course on how often it's played, or how much it's played in between. But anyway, so doing the backwards winding as you always do on a Gibson style headstock. Alright, let's get on. It's actually touching the screw. It doesn't really matter, to be quite honest. The last thing you want is any resonating strings on the back side of the bridge. So ideally, if something does choke them off, it's even better. Which is why, or partly why, that people buy those systems for going on the back end of, going between the bridge and the Bigsby system, partly to tension them correctly, but also to, I think, to deaden the sympathetic harmonic frequencies that can fire off, or whatever they might call them. Yeah, just the fact that, you know, another length of string runs the risk of resonating, which of course it does on, I think it's a number of Telecasters I've played or set up. You know, you get this extra harmonic that goes off actually on the tuning peg side of the nut, and you can get these high-pitched frequencies. I think it was Scott Grove actually on a video who got me kind of clued up to that, and sure enough it turned out to be true, and I was amazed really to hear it. It's like, no way, and this thing was singing away. So I used to, on a few guitars, I put little dabs of tape and things and whatever I could do to stop the resonance. Anyway, so I'm just getting towards the final bits of this guitar. I've preset the intonation in some sort of order, but judging by the bridge, how it was already set, somebody's already had a go at it and turned some of the saddles round, which is quite common. It usually happens when somebody feels they can't reach the correct intonation, so they, oh god, and I've done it loads of times. You have to kind of turn the saddle blocks round to get some extra intonation room out. You actually get an extra couple of millimetres, so it is worth doing if you don't have room to intonate it. But it's one of the inherent limitations of the Gibson tunematic bridge, that it just it has a relatively small intonation travel. Amongst the other things I detest most about it, but I'd be biased if I go on. Now, okay, so the other thing about this is that the nut on this is quite narrow, or the spacing is quite narrow, so it gives you a small grouping here and plenty of room, so it's nowhere near the edges. But what I'm going to do, like always, is I'm going to give it a good stretch. I won't forget that I've got these edges to fill here, which I'll either do with the combination of this filler and lacquer, or, well, you could do it with lacquer, but it's probably better to do it with the filler first and then lacquer over the finished thing. It's quite difficult to get any substance into little tiny holes like the gaps at the end of your frets. It's just one of life's difficult things that you can't really, well, you can try and fill syringes with it, but I've not found it very useful, and then you've got the problem of cleaning out syringe when it's gummed up. That's if you can get one fine enough to squirt it through. Let's start with a reference. Such an angle going through there. Surprised it ever stays in tune at all. Right, so I'm just going to have a quick look at what we've got in terms of action. It's probably a bit high now. God, we're way high. Why is that? Well, it doesn't really matter. Let's dial it home. Home you go. Hope that's going down. Oh yeah, sure is. 1.5, 1. Okay, do some pulls without breaking it, hopefully. Well, I've got a couple of spare top 10s, top E 10s, E top 10s, 10 top E's, intense top E's, whatever. Right. It would help if I wasn't playing with the plaster. Right, that's probably a fraction too low. I'll what are we on? We're on a millimetre. Yeah, it's a bit on the hopeful side. Let's just wind it up a tiny fraction more on both sides. And do some more stretching. So there we go. The secret of stretching the strings is only that you've just got to keep going. Don't give up. You'd be amazed if you haven't seen this before, or seen me do it, or prove it, or demonstrate it, but you'd be absolutely amazed how much residual slack is still in your strings 6 months, a year later, after you think it's come out of its own accord. And if you don't do this manual stretching, it will be still in there. It doesn't go anywhere. So it's quite amazing. And most people who bring me or send me their guitars and say they have tuning problems, first thing I can do is pull a string and stretch, and it'll go flat. And that's basically residual slack in the strings just coming out. So look, woo, we finally got there. The Flying V, the V. I don't know anything about the intonation yet, but I'll put it on the strap to test that. And see if I can, my finger will hold out. I'm not going to bleed all over the thing, but I just want to be able to get near to fretting the strings, or somewhere near it. Yeah, so this is the V, mostly done, just intonation to be tweaked. I have obviously, as you can see, there's a brass scratch plate. There's a bit of cleaning on the body to do and a bit of polishing, but brass scratch plate, and you can see the angles don't quite line up, but it still has quite a cool look to it, which I think beats the white stuff. It's a little bit top heavy. That's the only constraint. Do you know what? It feels good. I'm just seeing that the radius of this neck appears to be slightly different from the bridge. It seems to be always the case. There's some sort of mismatch, and that means that the G and the D are always a little, or very often a little closer to the strings, to the frets than the outer strings, and what it means is you kind of tend to have to set the action for those two. I don't know if it's something that happens over time, or whether the pneumatic bridge is some sort of standard thing that they'll quite match the neck or something. I don't know, but it's quite common. It's not, I've sort of checked, it's not like the result of having completely reshaped it. Morris. Ding. Need a bit of nut sanding. Nice one, up into the roof. Tone, I'll give it that much. That's on treble setting, full volume. It's got very, I like that. Now I've used a 50 style wiring on this, which is a little bit different on the tone configuration. Woohoo! Thanks, man. It's all my expensive pickups just taken a dive onto the floor. Cool. I'll have to pick those up in a minute. Looking at his handiwork, little devil. It has got a sweet tone, I've got to say. This is a nice set of pickups. Good old Korina. The point I was going to make before he knocked all that stuff off the shelf was that the 50s style wiring puts the capacitor runs the capacitor straight off the output on the switch, and it runs it to the outside, and it's the middle lug of this thing that's grounded, as opposed to normally it's either on the other side or left blank. So I'm just looking on here. You can feel the crack on the lacquer on this side, but it's no big deal. Yeah, so it gives it completely progressive tone operation. I really like that, and that, if that's what's making it work that way, I mean, it's a good CTS pod, but for the first time probably I've ever experienced a progressive tone operation instead of this on-off. See, that's quite a big difference. I like that. Makes it usable. The treble is a bit too much up on this silly little lamp, but apart from that, I like it. nice set of tones. I will give it to this V. That is really nice. It's nice because unlike most Strats, the single tone control is operating on all the pickup settings, and it's progressive and therefore usable. Well, that's I'm going to do a test now on the intonation, obviously, but yeah, first impressions, good. Needs a bit of sandpaper in there. On a clean sound, but what did we get if we go? Okay, so I'm impressed with that. I like the tone. Oop, turn that off. Very nice indeed. Okay, enough of that. Let's try the thingy out, whatever it's called, intonation, which we have to do with my favourite of bridges, the much hated Tune-o-matic bridge, and a flat blade Philip, no, you know, regular screwdriver. Let's hope that it's close to being right. Push this forward somewhat. Oh no, look, thanks to the clever design of this bleeding thing, I can't reach the bleeding thing to adjust the thing. Let's scrape the hell out of everything by trying to move this thing forward a bit. In which case, let's do the other ones to match as near as I can to begin with. Scrape. Oh, I love you, Tune-o-matics. It's just so much fun. we'll finally get there. You need sort of three-dimensional surgeon's eyes, you know, on the end of a stick, robotic eyes that you can push around corners and right. Let's try that. So a few little things to tidy up on here, including finishing the edges and replacing some of the lacquer. Such thick lacquer it's cracked off when I've sawn through it, basically. Still too long, flat, so I'm going to shorten it a bit by counterclockwise it in the direction, sending the saddle in the direction of the nut. I'm hoping. Oh my word, it's just nigh impossible. I'd love to have gone back in time and say, do you really want to do it this way? Look, it's getting caught up on the string. Can you believe it? It's going to break the string in a minute now. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to go back and find who did it. Who done it? Who was it? Come on. Don't worry about that. What you're hearing there is the horror of binding nut tuning problems. Almost there. I'm going to send it forward a tiny bit more. If the thing will, oh lordy, behave. That's going to be as far as it wants to go. Let's try the G now. Almost there. To come back a little bit, so a little bit of clockwise action. Oh god, it's awful. A little bit clockwise on the B, but then we'll try that. Oh, that's got caught up as well. Absolutely brilliant. What an invention. Ah, such engineering. Fractionally short, so I'm going to pull it longer. Sorry. And same with this one. I can just, oh crikey. I hate this. Pull this one back. Actually, no. Get my stuff together. Sharp on E, so drag the E back a little bit. If I can make this move without breaking the string. And again. Oh my word. This is prehistoric. Sorry. Still back a bit more. Don't leave it. You know that one, played that the other night. A lot of potential, that song, but I don't think we did it justice. Still, we can try again. Live and learn. Okay, so we've got some sandpapering to do in the nut slots. Once that's done, once that's done, it'll be nice. See, hear how much that A went out of tune there? It's because of these pings. It's jumping forward in chunks. And as a result, let's push that aside a minute. As a result, what's happening is it's detuning in chunks as well. So if I were to get this in here like this, turn this, turn this down a second, we'll get some 600 grit sandpaper into play, and get a blade, and let's just do a bit of widening on all of these just to be on the safe side. So 600 grit around the blade, the right way around. Being careful not to slice your finger off again, as I have done several times today. And then it's really about pushing from side to side, as opposed to avoiding, or mainly avoiding, touching the bottom of the slot, because we don't want to take any more or create any more depth. We just want to widen it, and it's going to be even more likely to stick with a guitar like this because of the angle. It's not so bad on the middle strings, or the A and the D and the G, but certainly on the B and the A, the B and the top E, it's going to be pulling sideways, so it's quite easy to imagine that it catches, or it's easier to imagine it snagging. Wouldn't you say, Morris? So once this is running smoothly, then you get smooth and progressive tuning out of it, and that's the really, ow, oi, that's the really important bit, is you can really tell once you've got the slot at the right width, because suddenly the tuning becomes really smooth and it goes up and down very in a linear fashion, a bit like the tone. Like that. There are no pings and jumps, so obviously as we get into the thinner bits, look out, I'm going to change over and use the sharper edge. Where's the boy gone now? He's down there. He's weird. What are you saying, Morris? Is it a bit too rainy for you to go out? And I'm just going to clear a bit of space there. Hello there. Sometimes he jumps up and I might be using some resin or something, and then he gets a sniff of it and he thinks, what have I done? And jumps back out of the way pronto. But he always likes to come up for a bit of company. So again, just width, widening. And I always say, I've always recommended that when it comes to getting your tuning stable, if you really want stable tuning, you've got to get the slots free running first. There's no point chucking in you know, graphite powder and nut sauce or any of that stuff if the slots aren't right, and there really is no substitute for getting the slots right. So I do say keep going at it until you've got the slots right, and then add, as a final touch, add some graphite or nut sauce or whatever the stuff is you like to use, which will just be a sort of icing on the cake. What is it, my boy? Alright, I'll give you some attention in a second, hold on. There we are. Who's a special boy? Mr. Fluff, eh? How are you doing? Using your mane, aren't you, for the summer? You've got a great big bald spot there where I think we might have pulled some of your knots out a bit too hard. I feel very sorry for you. Right, we're out of tune again, but that's fine. Still a ping there on the A, which means it's not going to go in tune. So you've got to be really, really disciplined. If you hear that it's not ready, the D is. Low E is. G is. So it's the A that isn't still. No. Okay, we're nearly there, mister. Now you've been very sweet, but I can't get in. Oh, I can't get in to do my last little bit. Well, I'll do it standing up on a neck that's a little bit top heavy. And I wonder if that was, not really heard much said about that, so it's all going everywhere. The fact that it's the fact that it is a bit top heavy. I've heard a lot obviously about the SG suffering from that. I haven't really heard much about the V in that respect. Okay, that's moving freely. So really now it's just a matter of getting the last of the stretch out of these. Having slacked them off and tightened them up, they'll obviously regain a bit of stretch, a bit of slack. So it will start to stabilise very soon. Mr. Fur. So you can see that's a nice progressive linear. Oh my god, I've cut myself in every which. What is the matter with me? Oh my lord, I've got another. Shouldn't be that loose with those blades. I've not got much left in the way of good fingers. So I'm going to stop there for now. A couple of little jobs to do on here still. I'm going to repair these little bits, or fill these little end bits here and build up the lacquer. God, it's so thick you can't really cut your saw through there without crunching it, which I've done, unfortunately. But you know, we'll get it there. Interestingly, it's not so bad on this side. It's worse on this side for some reason, but anyway, I'll tidy that up. But there we have it, the Korina V, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, a really smart sounding guitar, the sound of which is way better than I had expected. I'm really impressed with it. It's got my custom built pickguard on it, but hey, it's nicely intonated, playing beautifully, sounds great, and with this lovely progressive tone, which I've never really experienced before. So I'm going to wire everything that way from now on. So there you go. Korina V, it's done, nearly, almost done, but a few little tweaks. But there you go. Thanks for sticking it out. I hope you enjoyed it.